The meeting room was huge, built from some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Ships from 40 different alien worlds floated outside the windows, each one representing a different species in the galactic assembly. Inside the room, creatures of all shapes and sizes sat in chairs designed for their unique bodies. Commander stood at the center. He looked like a giant insect, with hard armor covering his body and multiple eyes that could see in every direction. His people had been part of the assembly for thousands of years. Today, he had important news to share. "We have found another species," said. His words came out as clicks and whistles, but a small device translated them into sounds everyone could understand. "They call themselves humans. They come from a planet called Earth, in a quiet part of the galaxy. We have been watching them for some time now." Most of the aliens in the room seemed excited. Finding new species was always interesting. But one alien, sitting in the back, did not look happy. Her name was Elder Al, and she was very old. Her species had been exploring space longer than almost anyone else. She had seen things that most of the other aliens could only read about in history books. "What do we know about these humans?" asked a blob-like creature named. He pulsed different colors as he spoke, which was how his species showed emotion. Pulled up images on the big screen. The aliens saw pictures of Earth, a blue and green planet covered mostly with water. Then they saw pictures of humans themselves. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. They looked fragile compared to most of the species in the room. "They are a young species," explained. "They only discovered nuclear power 300 years ago. They have just started exploring their own solar system. Their technology is primitive, but they are curious and intelligent." "They sound perfect for the assembly," said happily. "We can teach them so much. We can help them grow." Elder Al raised one of her 6 arms. Everyone turned to look at her. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. "I have studied the old records," she said. "There are certain warning signs we should watch for in new species. These humans match many of those signs." Several aliens made sounds that translated as laughter. A reptile-like delegate named shook his head. "Elder Al, with respect, those old warnings are just stories, ancient superstitions from a less enlightened time. We know better now. We have science and reason." Al's eyes, cloudy with age but still sharp, fixed on. "I am old enough to have seen what happens when warnings are ignored. My people watched the Hen Empire destroy itself. We saw the incident. In each case there were signs that were dismissed as superstition." Clicked his mandibles together, trying to keep the meeting calm. "Elder, what specific concerns do you have about the humans?" "They fight," Al said simply. "Not occasionally, like most species do before they reach the stars. Constantly. Their entire history is one long war interrupted by brief moments of peace. They have divided their single planet into hundreds of groups, and these groups fight each other over everything. Land, resources, ideas, even invisible lines they draw on maps. Many species have wars before they unite," pointed out. "It's part of growing up as a civilization." "It's not just that they fight," Al continued. "It's how they fight. They study it. They have schools dedicated to teaching the art of war. They write books about strategy and tactics. They treat warfare like a science, always improving, always innovating. And most concerning of all, they fight even when it's illogical. Even when they know they will lose, they keep fighting." Pulsed a deep blue, showing his amusement. "That just sounds stubborn, not dangerous." "Stubbornness can be very dangerous," Al replied. "But there's more. They have something they call nuclear weapons, devices that can destroy entire cities in seconds. And do you know what's remarkable? They built these weapons and then chose not to use them. For hundreds of years, they have possessed the ability to destroy themselves completely, and they have chosen not to. That shows incredible restraint." "That sounds like a good thing," said confused. "It's terrifying," Al corrected. "A species that can build such weapons and then choose not to use them is a species that understands patience, strategy, long-term planning. They can control their violent instincts when it serves their interests. That makes them far more dangerous than a species that simply cannot help being violent. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then spoke again. Your concerns are noted, Elder, but we have made contact with them and so far they have been nothing but friendly. Captain Gregg of their ship, the Pathfinder, has agreed to meet with us. He seems eager to learn about the galaxy. Eager, Al repeated the word slowly. Yes, that's another warning sign. Despite Al's warnings, the first contact went well. The human ship, Pathfinder, was small and primitive by galactic standards, but it had traveled farther from Earth than any human ship before it. Captain Gregg was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore a blue uniform with patches and symbols on it. With him was his second in command, Lieutenant Kate. She was younger, with dark hair pulled back in a tight style. She had learned several alien languages in preparation for this meeting, which impressed the aliens greatly. Most species relied on translation devices, but Kate wanted to make the effort to communicate directly. The meeting took place on the Luminous Dawn, the Assembly's diplomatic ship. When Gregg and Kate first saw the inside of the alien vessel, they couldn't hide their amazement. The walls seemed alive with light. The air smelled of flowers they had never encountered. Aliens of every shape walked past them, going about their business. "This is incredible," Gregg said to the Assembly representative who greeted them. "We've dreamed of this moment for so long." The representative, a graceful being named Lyra, smiled in her own way. "We are pleased to meet you as well. Your species shows great promise. We would like to offer you membership in the Galactic Assembly." Kate's eyes went wide. Membership just like that? "Well, there are some requirements," Lyra explained. "All member species must follow the peace accord. It's a set of rules that has kept the galaxy peaceful for 10,000 years. "What kind of rules?" Gregg asked carefully. "Mainly limits on military forces," Lyra said. "Each species is allowed to maintain a small defense fleet for emergencies, but nothing more. We also restrict certain types of weapons research. The galaxy has learned that the best way to prevent war is to make war impossible." Gregg and Kate exchanged glances. They both knew this would be a difficult conversation back on Earth. Over the next few weeks, the debate on Earth was intense. The government held emergency sessions. Scientists argued with military leaders. Regular people watched news broadcasts and argued with each other about what humanity should do. Admiral Richard Hayes stood in front of the United Nations. He was a veteran of many conflicts, with gray hair cut short and a face that rarely smiled. When he spoke, people listened. "I understand why this offer is tempting," he said. "We get access to advanced technology, medical treatments that could cure diseases, faster-than-light travel, knowledge about thousands of other civilizations. But the price is too high. They want us to reduce our military by more than half. They want us to stop researching new weapons. They want us to trust that their peace accord will protect us." A woman named Brooke stood up. She was the Secretary of State, responsible for Earth's relationships with other nations. She had spent her career building bridges between different groups of humans. "Admiral Hayes speaks from fear," said, "but fear has never served humanity well. Every time in our history when we chose isolation over cooperation, we suffered for it. This is our chance to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Yes, there's risk, but there's also incredible opportunity." The vote was close. Many people wanted the benefits that alien technology could bring. Others worried about giving up Earth's ability to defend itself. In the end, the promise of the stars won. Earth agreed to join the Galactic Assembly and follow the peace accord. Captain Gregg watched as human ships began to change. The Assembly sent engineers to help upgrade Earth's vessels with new technology. Ships that once took months to cross the solar system could now make the trip in days. Communication became instant, no matter the distance. It was everything the Assembly had promised. Kate worked with alien scientists, learning about technologies that humans had only dreamed of. She sent reports back to Earth that seemed like science fiction. Medicine that could regrow limbs, power sources that produced no waste, materials that were stronger than anything humans had ever created. "It's real," she told Greg one day as they reviewed the latest upgrades to the Pathfinder. "Everything they promised, it's all real. We made the right choice." But not everyone agreed. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, in a facility that didn't appear on any official maps, Admiral Hayes met with a small group of people. There were military officers, scientists, and engineers. All of them had been chosen because they shared Hayes's concerns. "I hope we never need this," Hayes told them. "I truly hope that the Galactic Assembly is exactly what it appears to be, a peaceful organization that wants to help us. But hope is not a plan. We need insurance." Dr. Cole, a thin man with glasses and nervous hands, nodded. "You want us to continue weapons research, in secret, in violation of the peace accord we just signed." "I want us to maintain the ability to defend ourselves," Hayes corrected. "If I'm wrong, if the assembly is trustworthy, then this project stays secret forever and no one gets hurt. But if I'm right, if there's danger out there that the assembly can't or won't protect us from, then humanity survives." The project was given a code name, Sanctuary. Only a few dozen people knew it existed. They worked in hidden facilities, developing weapons and technologies that the peace accord had forbidden. It was a gamble. If the assembly discovered what they were doing, Earth's membership would be revoked. Humanity would be quarantined from the rest of the galaxy, alone again. But Hayes believed it was a necessary gamble, and he made sure that every person working on Sanctuary understood the stakes. Meanwhile, Earth's integration into galactic society continued. Human students attended alien universities. Human artists created works that combined human and alien styles. Human athletes competed in sports played across 100 worlds. It was a golden age, and most humans believed it would last forever. At a space station on the edge of human territory, a young officer named sat at his monitoring station. His job was to watch for unusual activity in the space around Earth's solar system. It was usually boring work. Space was vast and empty, and most days nothing interesting happened. But today was different. "That's weird," muttered to himself, looking at his screens. He saw energy readings that didn't match anything in the database. They weren't from stars or planets or any natural phenomenon he knew about, and they were moving, traveling through space with clear purpose. He reported it to his supervisor, who reported it up the chain of command. The report eventually reached military headquarters, where it was filed away as an anomaly to be investigated when time allowed. Everyone was too busy celebrating humanity's new place in the galaxy to worry about strange energy readings from the edge of explored space. Elder Al, in her home on the Assembly world, received the same data. Her people had monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, watching for threats. When she saw the readings, her blood ran cold. She had seen signatures like this before, in old records from ancient times. She made her way to the council chamber again. Her body was old and the journey was difficult, but this was too important to ignore. When she arrived, she found the council in the middle of a celebration. Humanity had just been granted provisional membership in the assembly. There were speeches and congratulations. "You celebrate," Al said, her voice cutting through the happy noise. "But you have made a terrible mistake." Commander, who had grown quite fond of the humans over the past months, looked at her with something like pity. "Elder Al, your warnings about the humans have not come true. They have been model members of the assembly, cooperative, respectful, eager to learn." "That's exactly what concerns me," Al said. "You see their cooperation as friendship. I see it as strategy. You have taught them everything about how the assembly works. You have shown them all your worlds, all your resources, all your weaknesses, and they have smiled and thanked you and asked for more. You make it sound sinister, said, pulsing an annoyed orange color. They're just being friendly. A predator is most dangerous when it appears friendly, Al replied. The humans have done exactly what I would do if I wanted to study a potential threat. They have embedded themselves in our society. They have gained our trust. They have learned our languages, our customs, our technologies, all while appearing humble and grateful. These are the actions of a species that wants to be part of our community, insisted, not a threat. Al's eyes fixed on him. Tell me, Commander, in all your dealings with the humans, have you ever seen them lose their temper? Have you ever seen them show anger or frustration or any negative emotion? Thought about it. They've always been very pleasant, professional. Exactly, Al said. They have perfect control. Every human you've met has been carefully chosen to make the best impression. They show you exactly what they want you to see. That level of control, that level of planning, it's not the behavior of a simple, friendly species. It's the behavior of a species that knows how to play a long game. I think you're seeing threats where none exist, said, but I will note your concerns in the official record. Al left the chamber feeling like she was watching history repeat itself. She had lived long enough to see patterns that others missed. She knew how this would end. She just hoped that when the truth was revealed, the galaxy would survive the lesson. Back on Earth, in his mountain facility, Admiral Hayes reviewed the latest reports from Project Sanctuary. The weapons being developed were beyond anything the Galactic Assembly possessed. That could punch through alien armor, nanomachines that could dismantle matter at the molecular level, energy weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Are we the bad guys? Dr. Cole asked one day, looking at the destructive potential of their creations. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he finally said. Maybe we are. Maybe I'm wrong about everything, and we're building weapons we'll never need against threats that don't exist. But I'd rather be wrong and prepared than right and defenseless. He looked out at the stars through the facility's observation window. Somewhere out there, among all those peaceful alien civilizations, something was coming. He could feel it. Call it instinct, call it paranoia, call it whatever you wanted. Hayes had learned to trust that feeling. It had kept him alive through 3 wars and countless battles. And that feeling was telling him that humanity's real test was still ahead. The attack came on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. The first planet to fall was a peaceful world called Nexus 7, home to a species of plant-based aliens who had lived in harmony for thousands of years. The distress signal was brief and terrifying. Then there was nothing but silence. Within hours, more worlds went dark. The enemy was called the Swarm, and they were unlike anything the Galactic Assembly had ever faced. They didn't use ships in the traditional sense. Instead, they grew their vessels from living tissue, massive creatures of flesh and bone that could survive in the vacuum of space. These creatures moved in huge groups, consuming everything in their path. They didn't want to conquer. They didn't want to negotiate. They wanted to eat. Every planet they touched was stripped clean of all life, all resources, all matter. What remained was a dead rock floating in space, and then they moved to the next world. Commander stood in the council chamber, and for the first time in his long career, he felt true fear. The reports coming in were all the same. The Assembly's defense fleets had engaged thee and been destroyed. Their energy weapons, which had always been sufficient for the rare conflicts that arose, were useless. The ships absorbed the energy and used it to grow stronger. How many worlds have we lost? Asked, his body pulsing a sick gray color. 17, replied, his voice hollow. And the swarm is accelerating. At their current rate, they'll reach the core worlds within 3 months. We have nothing that can stop them. The council chamber erupted in panic. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages, all asking the same question. What do we do? It was Elder Al who spoke next, and her voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Contact the humans, she said simply. Everyone turned to look at her. His mandibles clicked in confusion. The humans, elder with respect, their fleet is even smaller than ours. They only have a handful of ships. What could they possibly do? Al's ancient eyes fixed on him. You're about to find out what I've been warning you about. Contact them, tell them what's happening, and then watch what they do. Captain Gregg received the distress call on the Unity, the diplomatic ship he now commanded. Kate stood beside him, watching the data stream in. The images from the fallen worlds were horrific. Cities reduced to dust. Oceans boiled away. Entire civilizations erased in hours. My God, Kate whispered, how many dead? Billions, Gregg replied, his voice tight. And it's heading toward Earth. 4 months, maybe less. Kate pulled up a tactical map. Our fleet isn't ready for this. We reduced our military according to the peace accord. We have maybe 30 ships capable of combat, and they're all designed for defense, not this kind of assault. Gregg was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a communication channel, one that he had been given when he first took command of the Unity. It was a direct line to Earth Military Command, to a man he hadn't spoken to in months. Admiral Hayes, Gregg said when the connection was established, I think it's time. On Earth, Admiral Hayes sat in his office beneath the mountains. He had been monitoring the situation in the outer territories for days now. He knew what was coming. Part of him felt vindicated that his paranoia had been justified. Another part of him felt sick at being right. Captain, Hayes replied, I've been expecting your call, stand by, we're launching now. Hayes stood and walked to the command center of the sanctuary facility. Dr. Cole was already there, along with dozens of officers and technicians. On the screens around the room, Hayes could see the ships that had been built in secret over the past 2 years. The Defiant was a warship, sleek and deadly, covered in weapons that the Galactic Assembly had never seen. The Forge was a carrier ship that held hundreds of small fighter craft. The Hammer was the largest of them all, a vessel whose sole purpose was to deliver overwhelming destructive force. And there were others, dozens of ships that had been hidden away, waiting for this moment. All ships report ready, sir, said Captain Lisa Grant, commander of the Defiant. Her image appeared on the screen, a woman in her 40s with short hair and eyes that had seen combat before. Then let's go save the galaxy, Hayes said. The human fleet appeared in space like ghosts materializing from nothing. One moment the area was empty, the next it was filled with warships. The Galactic Assembly ships that were trying to evacuate civilian populations from threatened worlds stopped what they were doing and stared in shock. Where did they come from? Demanded, watching the display in the council chamber. They've been building them in secret, Al said calmly. While you thought they were complying with the peace accord, they were preparing for exactly this scenario. They lied to us, said, his body pulsing angry red. They violated the treaty. They survived, Al corrected. There's a difference. Admiral Hayes broadcast a message to the entire Galactic Assembly. His face appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds, and when he spoke, there was no apology in his voice. Members of the Galactic Assembly, this is Admiral Richard Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call regarding the swarm. We're here to help. But before we do, you need to understand something. When we agreed to your peace accord, we did so publicly. But privately, we maintained research and development projects that continued in secret. We built ships and weapons that your treaty forbade. Some of you will call this a betrayal. Some will say we lied. And you'd be right. We did. He paused, letting that sink in. But we're human, Hayes continued. And humans learned a long time ago that peace is not the natural state of the universe. Peace is something you have to fight for, something you have to be strong enough to defend. We trusted you, but we also prepared for the possibility that trust might not be enough. Now you can spend time being angry with us, or you can let us save your lives. Your choice. The council chamber was silent. Finally, it was who spoke. What do you need from us? Nothing, Hayes replied. Just stay out of our way. The human fleet met the swarm at a system called a strategic location that would determine whether the enemy reached the inner territories of the assembly. If the swarm got past, there would be no stopping them from reaching Earth and the other core worlds. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the approach. There were thousands of them, living ships that looked like giant insects crossed with whales, their bodies pulsing with biological light. They moved like a school of fish, turning and diving as one organism. "Weapons armed," reported her tactical officer, a young man named Danny Price. "We have firing solutions on the lead elements." "Fire at will," Lisa commanded. The Defiant's main guns opened up, and they were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of energy beams that they could absorb, the human ship fired solid projectiles. But these weren't simple bullets. They were rounds, accelerated to incredible speeds using magnetic fields. When they hit the ships, the kinetic energy was devastating. Biological armor that could resist energy weapons was torn apart by the physical impact. But the real surprise came from the forge. The carrier ship launched hundreds of small fighter craft, each one piloted by a human with years of training. These fighters carried a variety of weapons, each one designed to exploit the biological nature of the. Commander Cooper flew his fighter into the swarm, his hands steady on the controls despite the chaos around him. Behind him, his wingman Lieutenant Amy matched his every move. "Deploying payload," said calmly, releasing a cloud of nanomachines from his fighter. These microscopic robots were programmed with one purpose: to disassemble biological tissue at the molecular level. The nanomachines spread through the formation like an invisible plague. Where they touched the living ships, the flesh began to break down, falling apart piece by piece. They tried to adapt, their biology shifting and changing to resist the attack, but the humans had anticipated this. "Switching to thermal weapons," Amy reported, firing a different type of missile. This one released a burst of extreme cold, flash freezing the biological tissue of the ships. The frozen sections became brittle and shattered when hit by conventional weapons. Back on the Defiant, Lisa watched as wave after wave of fighters deployed different weapons. Chemical agents that disrupted the hive mind connecting the sonic weapons that found the resonant frequency of their biological hulls and tore them apart from the inside. Viral weapons that infected the living tissue and turned it against itself. "They're learning," Dr. Cole reported from his position on Earth. He was monitoring the battle in real time, analyzing the effectiveness of each weapon. "They are adapting to each attack. They're getting harder to kill." "Good," Admiral Hayes replied. "That's what we planned for." He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships execute Phase 2, draw them in." The human ships suddenly began to retreat, pulling back toward the center of the system. To the watching assembly forces, it looked like the humans were losing, being pushed back by the overwhelming numbers of the. But Elder Al, watching from her chamber, knew better. "They're hurting them," she said to herself, "like hunters driving prey into a trap." The sensing victory pursued aggressively. They poured into the system, thousands of living ships all focused on destroying the human fleet. They didn't notice that they were being guided into a specific region of space, a carefully chosen killing zone. On the Hammer, the ship's captain, a stern man named Victor, counted down. This entire ship had been built for one purpose: to deliver a single devastating blow. It had taken 2 years to construct and had consumed a significant portion of Project Sanctuary's budget. Now it was time to see if it was worth the cost. "Target locked," Victor reported. "Stellar lance charging." The weapon at the heart of the Hammer began to build power. It was called a stellar lance, and it was the most destructive weapon humanity had ever created. It worked by generating and focusing the same type of energy released by a supernova, the death explosion of a star. The amount of power required was enormous. which was why the entire ship was essentially just a massive power plant attached to a gun. Firing in 3, 2, 1, fire. Space itself seemed to scream. A beam of pure energy as bright as a star erupted from the hammer and crossed the distance to the swarm in a fraction of a second. Where it touched the living ships, they simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris. The matter was converted directly into energy, leaving nothing behind. The beam lasted for 10 seconds. In that time, it destroyed more than 3,000 ships. The ones at the edges of the blast survived, but they were crippled, their biological systems overwhelmed by the radiation. Without the hive mind to guide them, they drifted aimlessly in space. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the vanguard had been eliminated. The threat was not gone completely, but it had been stopped. The swarm's advance had been halted, and the remaining retreated back to the edge of the galaxy, unwilling to face the humans again. In the aftermath, Captain Greg brought the Unity alongside the Defiant. He found Captain Lisa Grant on her bridge, exhausted but alert. Her crew was busy with repairs and maintenance, but they moved with the efficiency of experienced soldiers. "That was impressive," Greg said quietly. Lisa looked at him with tired eyes. "It was necessary, but I wish it hadn't been." "Do you regret the secret?" Greg asked. "Building all this without telling the assembly?" Lisa thought about it. "No, because if we hadn't, we'd all be dead right now. Sometimes you have to do what's right even when others think it's wrong." The Galactic Assembly convened in emergency session. The council chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. Commander stood at the center, but this time he wasn't in charge. That role had fallen to President Sandra Clark of Earth, a sharp woman in her 60s who had led her planet through the crisis with calm determination. "You saved us," said, and there was genuine gratitude in his translated voice. "But you also deceived us. You violated the peace accord. How can we trust you now?" Sandra didn't flinch. "You can't, not completely. And honestly, that's healthier than blind trust. Among humans, trust is earned through actions over time, not given freely because someone seems friendly." "But the deception," insisted, still upset. "You smiled and agreed to our terms while secretly doing the opposite." "We agreed to reduce our public military," Sandra corrected. "We never said we wouldn't maintain the ability to defend ourselves. You assumed we were helpless because we appeared cooperative. That was your mistake, not ours." Elder Al spoke then, and for the first time there was approval in her ancient voice. "The President speaks truth. The Assembly has grown weak through 10,000 years of peace. You forgot that peace must be defended. You thought that by making war impossible, you had made it unnecessary. But the universe doesn't care about your treaties. Threats exist whether you prepare for them or not." Over the following months, the galaxy changed. Human battle groups worked with reformed Assembly Defense Forces to establish a quarantine zone around the remaining territory. The galaxy learned new concepts from the humans: deterrence, strategic defense, peace through strength. Some species embraced these ideas. Others recoiled, horrified at the implications. But none could deny that humanity had saved them all. Captain Greg and Kate stood on the observation deck of the Unity, looking out at the stars. Below them, Earth rotated slowly, blue and green and beautiful. "Elder Al was right about us," Greg said. "We're not what the Assembly expected." Kate nodded. "They saw our eagerness to join them and thought we were weak. They didn't understand that humans can be patient when we need to be. We can wait, watch, and prepare. And when the moment comes, we act." "Do you think they'll ever really trust us?" Greg asked. "Some will, some won't," Kate replied. "But that's okay. We didn't do this for trust. We did it because it was right." In her chambers on the Assembly, Elder Al made a new entry in her people's ancient records. Her words would be preserved for future generations, a lesson learned at great cost. She wrote, "The elders warned about species like the humans. We did not listen. We saw their cooperation and mistook it for weakness. We saw their patience and thought it was passivity. We saw their friendliness and believed they were harmless. We were wrong about all of it. Humans are dangerous not because they are violent, but because they can choose when to be violent. They are dangerous because they think generations ahead. They are dangerous because they smile while they prepare for war. The galaxy nearly died learning this lesson. Those who come after must remember, a predator that chooses peace is far more dangerous than one that knows nothing else. Admiral Hayes stood in the command center of the sanctuary facility, now officially acknowledged and no longer secret. Dr. Cole stood beside him, and they watched the news broadcasts showing the galaxy's reaction to recent events. "Think they've learned?" Cole asked. Hayes considered the question. "Some have, others will need more time, but that's fine. Humans are good at being patient." "What about the weapons programs?" "Public now, but under human control," Hayes replied. "The Assembly gets access to some defensive technology, but the really dangerous stuff stays with us. They're not happy about it, but they're alive to complain." Cole smiled slightly. "The elders warned about us. Makes you wonder what else they know." Hayes's expression grew serious. "Al mentioned other species, other warnings in her people's records. I've requested access to those archives. If there are other threats out there, I want to know about them before they arrive." "Always preparing for the next war." "No," Hayes corrected gently. "Preparing so the next war never has to happen. That's the difference between being paranoid and being responsible." As they spoke, a message arrived through the quantum communication network. It came from deep space, from a species that humanity had not yet encountered. Elder Al received it first and read it with mixed emotions. The message was simple but significant. "You were right about the humans. We are returning from our long journey. It is time to share what we know about the others who match the ancient warnings." The galaxy was changing, and humanity stood at the center of that change. They had proven themselves capable of both peace and terrible violence. They were partners in the galactic community, but partners who would never be helpless again. They were respected, and perhaps more importantly, they were feared when necessary. The elders had warned about humans. The Assembly hadn't believed until it was too late. Too late to avoid the lesson, but not too late to survive it. And in the end, survival was what mattered most. The galaxy would have to learn to live with humanity as they truly were, not as the Assembly had wanted them to be. And humanity, for their part, would continue to do what they had always done: smile, cooperate, and quietly prepare for whatever came next.